Here's a brutal truth most men don't want to hear. They're not going to miss you while you're still chasing them. They won't miss you when you're always available, always texting, always asking how they feel. They won't miss you when they know exactly where to find you and exactly how to get your attention. They only miss you the moment they realize they can't reach you anymore. That's the turning point. That's when everything shifts. Let me explain exactly why and how you can use this moment to reclaim your power. When someone is always present, always reaching out, always offering their time and energy, it becomes easy to take them for granted. That's not because people are cruel. It's because human nature adapts quickly to what's consistent and easy to access. When you're always available, your presence becomes predictable. You become a part of the background, like white noise. Always there, but rarely noticed. That's why people often don't miss you while you're still trying to be missed. They don't feel your absence because they haven't had a chance to experience it. Think about how we value scarcity. When something is rare or difficult to get, it instantly becomes more appealing. The same principle applies to your attention and presence. If you're constantly giving, constantly texting, checking in, or waiting around, you're not giving the other person a reason to wonder about you or reflect on your value. You're giving them certainty, and certainty often breeds complacency. The reality is that people can't appreciate what they've never had to live without. They can't feel your absence if you never step away. That's why pulling back is powerful, not as a tactic to manipulate, but as a necessary act of self-respect. When you stop being so available, you stop being taken for granted. You stop being the guy who's always waiting and start becoming the man who's missed. It's in the silence, in the space you leave behind, where they begin to notice what they no longer have. And that realization only comes when you remove your energy from the equation. They don't miss you when you're still present. They miss you the moment they realize you're not there and might not come back. That's when they truly feel it. When you go silent and pull back from someone who once had your full attention, it's easy for them to assume you've disappeared into the background like most people do. But what they don't expect, what truly stings, is when they come back around and see that you didn't just go quiet. You grew, you evolved, you used that space, that absence, to transform into someone better, stronger, and more grounded. That's when the emotional impact hits differently. You didn't wait, you didn't chase. You rebuilt yourself in silence. And now you're standing taller than ever. The version of you they remember is no longer the version that exists. Maybe you've started working on your body. Maybe your business is thriving, or your confidence is unshakable. Maybe you've stopped seeking approval and started living with purpose. Whatever it is, your growth becomes undeniable and deeply attractive. It forces them to compare the man they left with the man they see now. That contrast can create a powerful emotional response, one that makes them question their choices. What makes this even more powerful is that it wasn't done to prove anything. You didn't post your progress for validation or throw it in their face. You simply did the work for yourself. And because of that, your transformation feels authentic. It speaks louder than any message you could send. They come looking for the man they used to know, but they find someone different, someone they now realize they underestimated. In that moment, they're hit with a sense of loss. Not just because you're no longer available, but because the version of you they thought they could always return to no longer exists. That's the moment they start to feel it. That's the moment they truly miss you. When you stop reacting emotionally and become indifferent to someone who once had power over your feelings, everything changes. Indifference is not about being cold or bitter. It's about showing that you're no longer emotionally tied to how they act or what they do. That shift is incredibly powerful. It communicates without a single word that their presence is no longer essential to your peace of mind. And nothing catches someone off guard more than the realization that you no longer need their attention or approval to feel good about yourself. Most people expect a reaction. They expect you to chase, to argue, to seek closure. When you don't give them that emotional feedback, it creates confusion. Suddenly, they're left wondering why you're not responding the way you used to. That silence becomes louder than any words you could speak. It tells them, unmistakably, that you've detached and that you've taken back your power. Indifference forces them to sit with their own thoughts, without the comfort of knowing you're still emotionally invested. That's when they begin to reflect. That's when they start to question whether they meant more to you than you let on, or if maybe, just maybe, they lost something of real value. The truth is, people feel your absence most not when you're angry or heartbroken, but when you're at peace without them. That calm, unbothered energy is rare. It stands out, and ironically, it often makes the greatest emotional impact, not because you tried to impress or convince them of anything, but because you stopped needing to. That's when your silence becomes your strength. That's when they start to miss you, not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't say. You walked away without a fight, and that speaks volumes they can't ignore. When you stop constantly seeking attention and being available, something remarkable begins to happen. The emotional distance between you and the other person starts to grow. At first, they may not notice the absence. The text responses slow down, the calls become less frequent, and your energy isn't as accessible. But over time, the space you create forces them to feel the gap. It's a strange paradox. By creating distance, you make them feel something real. The absence of your presence allows them to experience what they've been taking for granted. They might not miss you immediately, but as days pass, they begin to feel a certain emptiness where your energy used to be. That emotional distance is what triggers reflection. People don't often realize what they have until it's no longer there. When you stop being available at all times, they begin to wonder why you're not responding. They might start replaying moments in their head, remembering times when your attention was constant, when you made them feel special. The contrast between what they had and what they now lack starts to create an emotional shift. This space isn't a punishment or a game. It's simply a form of self-respect that forces them to deal with the consequences of their own actions. When emotional distance grows, they start to reflect on how they treated you, how they might have taken your presence for granted, or whether they made a mistake by not valuing you in the way they should have. That realization, whether it takes hours or weeks, is the moment they feel the loss. And it's in that moment that they truly start to miss you. Not because you're demanding attention, but because you've given them the space to feel what they lost. When you stop being available and shift your focus onto yourself, something powerful starts to happen. The person who once took you for granted begins to reflect on their choices. This often occurs gradually, as they realize that you're not desperately waiting around for their attention anymore. At first, they might not notice, thinking you'll always be there. But over time, when they see that you've moved on with your life, whether it's through self-improvement, new goals, or simply living a fuller life without them, it hits them differently. The absence becomes more noticeable, and with it comes the curiosity of why you're not chasing after them anymore. When they see that you've stopped needing their validation or their presence to feel whole, it forces them to reflect on the emotional bond you shared. This shift in focus doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from genuine growth and moving forward. You've become less dependent on them emotionally, and this emotional independence is one of the most attractive qualities you can possess. They begin to ask themselves, what happened to him? Why is he thriving without me? That's when they start questioning their own actions and whether they've made a mistake in walking away. This reflection is often triggered by the emotional void you left behind. As they realize that they no longer have access to your time, energy, or affection as they once did, they feel the loss. The contrast between the person who was always there and the person who is now emotionally detached is stark. They begin to feel the absence in a way that's impossible to ignore. And while they may not always act on it, that emotional shift is enough to make them miss you. And sometimes, That's when they come back. You don't get missed by being louder. You get missed by walking away with quiet strength. When you stop giving your energy to people who don't appreciate it, you become unforgettable. Not because you tried to be, but because you finally put yourself first. And that's the moment. They'll miss you not when you're waiting on them, but when you've already moved on.